What's up, everyone? Welcome to an all-new episode of TPR Podcast, where we dive into candid and casual conversations. I'm your host, Kennedy Thomas, and today we have Bea Millan-Windorski.
Hi, everyone. So
Miss
excited to be here.
Yes, Miss Earth USA is in the building. So thank you so much, Bea, for flying all the way out here to come talk to me.
Well, thank you for having me. I remember doing my interview with Molly while I was preparing for the national competition.
Yeah.
And that still is one of my favorite interviews.
Yeah, me too. And we just met in Miami for swim week. So how did you feel? I mean, it felt like we were out there for a week. We were out there for 2 days specifically, but were you out there a little bit longer or just for the competition thing?
Yeah, I was out there actually for a week before for Miami Swim Week. And I was fortunate enough to book a few shows.
Mhm.
I met a lot of fantastic people. One of my favorite shows was Beach Babe Bikini.
Mhm.
And she is actually a sustainable designer. All of her materials are sourced from Goodwill. So it was great to see that intersection between fashion and sustainability, and of course meet really great girls from all around the country.
Yeah. Were you nervous walking in those shows like beforehand, or were you just like, no, I got this. This is easy?
I was a bit nervous because I was talking with my walking coach and she was like, there's a difference between a model walk and a pageant walk.
Mhm.
For a model walk, you're trying to sell the clothes.
Yeah.
For a pageant walk, you're trying to sell yourself as like being a queen,
Mhm.
your kind of regalness, your personality. So we worked on kind of toning it down. My coach, Alma Cabasal, has both been like a runway model and is a former Miss Philippines Earth title holder. So it's been great to kind of hone in those different skills.
Yeah. And how did you find your walking coach? I know a lot of pageant girls or modeling girls trying to get into this world find it difficult to find their dream team or their coach. So how did you get in contact with yours?
I was really fortunate to have my mom is like Kris Jenner, momager. And when I was getting ready for Miss Earth USA, she was just kind of reaching out on Facebook Messenger to all of these Filipino American designers.
Mhm.
And she found Carl Andrada,
Mhm.
and he has been the best. I call him Tito Carl. He helped so much with my wardrobe, my mental prep. But he was like, girl, I love you, but your walk is kind of tragic. He was
Mhm.
like, I'm giving you a 3 out of 10, and I'm like being generous with that.
Oh, Lord.
And I was like, you're so valid. I watched my videos back from when I was just starting to prepare. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I walk like a dude. But he connected me with Alma Cabasal. She was Miss Philippines Earth Water, which is one of the elementals. And she was never a professional walking coach, but obviously she had success in pageantry before. So she really helped me. We met for 3 times a week for an hour a day for like 2 months. And that's like a lot. So she really honed in my skills, was so kind with the mental prep too, because
Mhm.
that is such,
That is
like,
key.
if you roadblock yourself before the stage, that's kind of a prerequisite to the performance.
Mhm.
And now she's a full bona fide walking coach. She's launching her own coaching sessions like professionally. And
Mhm.
I'm really happy that we kind of went through growth together.
Yeah. And you were mentioning your mom kind of being the manager of everything. I'm sure all of our moms are like that. And I remember in our past live chat with Molly, you were talking about your mom introducing you to compete in pageants. So can you please just tell us about that whole journey, competing in teen and then transitioning to Miss? Tell us about why you decided to say, yeah, okay, mom, I'll do it. Why not?
Yeah, I actually competed for my first pageant kind of like kicking and screaming. I was like, oh, I don't want to do this
Mhm.
because I was a competitive debater in high school and kind of had the same preconceived notions a lot of people do about pageants that like, oh, they're just pretty girls, like they don't have much going on. But then when I actually did Miss Wisconsin Teen USA, I think I was like 15 or 16. I was like, wow, these are some of the most accomplished, impressive, and eloquent women I've ever met. And I really caught that pageant bug.
Mhm.
I competed next year, and then I also explored the Miss America Outstanding Teen system because I'm a classically trained cellist. So
Mhm.
I really liked the talent element. But I took a really long break when I got to college. Miss Earth USA was actually my first Miss and national level pageant. So it was an interesting switch, but I actually really enjoy the system because of that strong advocacy element. It aligned with a lot of my more academic and activist goals. The opportunity to raise awareness of my advocacy on such an important scale was really important to me.
Yeah.
And then also, I'm sure a lot of girls struggle with this. I've always kind of been perceived as a miss instead of a teen. Growing up, I was really serious in a lot of ways, and I've always been tall. I'm 5'11". So consistently, that would be the feedback I got as a teen. So it was a really easy and natural switch for me.
Tell us about your academic life because y'all, this woman right here, she will school you on policies, immigration, climate crisis, and how it all interconnects. So please just tell us about like what your major was in college and how you've been able to incorporate that with Miss Earth USA when you were first competing.
Yeah, I I studied history, international relations, and Southeast Asian studies. And Miss Earth USA really aligned with my academic background because in school I started to learn about how the climate crisis and immigration, human displacement are all inextricably linked. As our Earth warms, there's rising sea levels, there's prolonged droughts, which all drive human movement. And unfortunately, our current laws are not conducive to this. The current Universal Declaration of Human Rights outlines how people can look for asylum, be granted asylum in countries like the United States. However, that was written in response to World War II. So it's all relating to being politically, religiously persecuted, persecution on ethnic grounds. There was never any consideration of how the climate might lead people to have to leave and find a home elsewhere. So long term, my goal has always been to work for the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. And now with the Miss Earth USA platform, I've been able to advocate for the introduction of a climate refugee visa, and the expansion of international definitions of refugees to include those displaced by climate change on this national scale. It's provided me a lot of opportunities too to explain it to people who are not quite plugged in with what's happening. Even climate activists I've met have never heard the phrase climate refugee before. And it's that educational work that needs to come before the more policy work, lobbying for legislative solutions to this issue.
Yeah. And where did this passion come from? I know you said in high school you were focused in on it, but diving deeper, was it family or what inspired you ultimately to pursue this historic and policy love?
It was two things. So I'm Filipino American, and the Philippines is an island nation that is acutely feeling the impacts of climate change. By 2050, over 8 million people will be displaced from the coastlines of the Philippines. But also, I grew up working as an English as a new language tutor for refugee students in high school and middle school. And it started with a lot of students from political situations. It was a lot of refugees from Myanmar who were being persecuted due to their religious and ethnic groups. However, over the course of my high school career, I saw more and more refugees from Puerto Rico, Honduras, different areas in South and Central America. And while they were granted asylum on a political basis, they were largely indigenous. There were a lot of people who were displaced by climate change. There were a lot of people, students displaced by Hurricane Maria from Puerto Rico, and there were a lot of students from Honduras, Guatemala, displaced from prolonged droughts. So just seeing that shift, it all kind of clicked for me when I started taking classes in university that were focused on climate refugee status.
Yeah. And you would think that, climate is a universal thing. You would think that states or countries will have some sort of policy in place because, it just seems that most people or the millions of billions of people who are displaced are a result of the climate change going on and or something political going on, like World War II. I mean, that was like decades ago. So why do you think that our states and our legislators don't really care for putting some sort of policy in place so that there is some sort of home for the people who are displaced?
Yeah, I unfortunately think it's a combination of factors. So, for one, policymakers have been really kicking the can down the road when talking about the impacts of climate change. The Kyoto Conference was, I think, in the 90s or early 2000s,
Mm.
and that was the first kind of multinational effort to try and curb the impacts of climate change.
Mhm.
However, it never met its targets. So the discourse kind of started shifting to by 2010, we hope to curb carbon emissions. By 2020, by 2030. And now all of the statistics that I refer to are by 2050.
Mm.
But 2050 is coming up fast, and we already see these huge impacts of climate change. I was just in Miami, and during hurricane season, the streets will flood up to your waist level.
Mm.
There's a lot of development in predominantly BIPOC communities where they're on higher ground away from the beachfront properties. So that used to be the least desirable areas. But now developers are moving in, displacing these communities because like that's where it won't flood anymore.
Mhm.
So that kind of shows the confluence of factors that comes in with climate change. And then the other thing is immigration is unfortunately a really political hot button issue right now.
Mhm.
Even at our southern border, there's an ongoing humanitarian crisis, but politically, it's really difficult to push for more immigration.
Yeah.
And I think what we need to realize is people don't leave their homes unless they have to.
Mhm.
A lot of these are families, children. In fact, 40% of displaced people worldwide are children.
Mhm.
And we in the US, unfortunately, have this preconceived notion of who a refugee is. And I hope to use this platform to challenge those preconceived notions and humanize the issue.
That's a fact because a lot of people see even the word immigration, people see it as something negative or something preconceived. So I'm glad that you're stepping up to the plate saying that, actually immigration isn't this negative connotation. It's just the migration of people. I mean, they don't want to leave their homes willingly. I mean, and if we look at the disparities when it comes to BIPOC and minorities, these are poor communities, so they're not attentive to as the well-off communities. So they are stuck in the runoff areas or
Mhm.
the just areas that are more susceptible to more damage when it comes to the health crisis. So one thing that I learned about taking an urban ecology class in college was just really tapping into taking a look at where we live at and meeting people where they are and involving yourself in local council
Mhm.
communities or meetings just to really get a grasp on what's going on where you live. So I'm super excited for you because, I mean, even with my studies in biotechnology
Mhm.
and how cannabis can be used on a therapeutic level, um, I mean, there's just not enough studies to really just support the positive change that there can be. And I think we need more people who are knowledgeable like us to be in the rooms to make policies and to have some sort of say so on what's going on. Because unfortunately, a lot of people don't know all this information.
Mhm.
Even world leaders don't know all this information as you do. So I'm super excited that you want to pursue this area that a lot of people don't talk about. So
Thank you so much. And thank you for all the work that you do in your community. I think it's really important. I was speaking to the president of the Florida Atlantic University Sustainability Club, and he's an engineer. And he was like, "Oh, I feel so lost sometimes because I don't understand the policy side of things." But
mm,
that just goes to show how diverse the experiences of individuals in the environmental movement are.
yeah.
We all bring our own strengths to the table, and hopefully together as a vast movement we can really affect change.
Yeah. And I also think that sometimes the basis of is climate change real or is climate change relevant? I think that's also a big question that a lot of people don't support. So what do you say to the people that you might come across who say like, climate change isn't real, like there's no impact? What do you say to those people?
I would say that we're already seeing the impacts of climate change in my own family. My dad's side is pretty conservative.
Mm.
So there is a bit of climate change denial. They like to say, well, there was just the ice age a few 100 years ago, thousands of years ago. Who's to say that that won't happen? Who's to say this isn't a natural occurrence? But if you look at the statistics, the growth of warming is exponential once you introduce human activities like the burning of fossil fuels. It's kind of undeniable when you see Miami flooding. And it isn't just some issue that impacts the global south that'll impact us years down the road. It's impacting North America now. So it's important that we take action now. And we also see it in more rural communities. I had the pleasure of meeting one of the plaintiffs of the Montana 16, and those were 16 young people who sued their government for creating an unlivable future for them. And in Montana, it's people who are working on farms, who have cows, who see their livestock dying because of drought. And I was also talking to a Florida resident who is like, I'm by no means like a leftist, but I've seen throughout my lifetime the shore, the tides slowly creep up. There used to be entirely beachfront at this park, but now it's right to the grass line. So it's really important to point out those kind of physical factors that make this occurrence undeniable.
Yeah. Are there little things that everyday people can do to sort of contribute in some sort of way when it comes to positively impacting the earth?
Yeah, it can be really overwhelming sometimes. We call it climate anxiety when it seems also overwhelming that you kind of just disengage. But there are always small actions. So I often try to take public transit or walk or bike instead of taking my own personal vehicle. So that cuts down on my own carbon footprint. Trying not to waste any food, considering what you will actually cook throughout the week instead of like throwing out produce. I was pretty bad about that in the beginning of college, but then I like kind of got to know how to meal prep, cook it right away so it doesn't go to waste. And then there's also policy things you can do. Stay up to date on what negotiations are going on with climate and refugee rights on the international level. Also on the local level, keep up to date on what policies your politicians at the community council level are passing in regard to our environment. And you can use the League of Conservation Voters website to determine how policymakers have voted in regards to our environment. Come your next election cycle, turn out to vote and vote for policymakers who have made a positive impact for our climate.
Yes, get in the know, do your research, please, and get involved because it's so simple as that. I mean, you wouldn't even realize that in my world, when it comes to cannabis therapeutics, if you went to the local meetings, you would have never thought that so many people are being denied quality access of having the care of using cannabis for its therapeutic use. A lot of these things are not put in the newspaper. So it's very important to get in the know and be active in your community. And Bea, you are so intellectual with this. Okay, so as a scientist and as people who are into literature and research and impact, how did you narrow down all of this jargon that we can sometimes get in the mix of saying? How did you narrow all of that down to something digestible as it relates to showcasing everything you present into the interview room for Miss Earth USA? Like, how did you knock everything down?
That is such a good question because oftentimes academics can kind of get caught up in the jargon. And what I want to do as Miss Earth USA is be a communicator to explain these really complex political and environmental issues to a larger audience. What really resonates with a lot of people is the island of Tuvalu. The president of Tuvalu actually gave a speech in knee-deep water where there used to be hard ground, where it used to be actually an island. And he was calling attention to the climate crisis and the fact that due to climate change, Tuvaluan culture will disappear as we know it. So they implemented this huge digital project to try to preserve Tuvalu as it existed prior to climate change. And just that physical representation of the sea level slowly creeping up on a place that used to be home to so many, really is a poignant reminder of what we're doing to our planet. And I'm also working on a children's book that aims to explain the climate refugee crisis to children using endangered species like the tarsier. The tarsier is a little animal, a mammal from the Philippines, and he has these huge eyes that are so visually striking, but he's losing his home due to deforestation, and he has to find a new home. It's about his journey trying to find a new place to live. And that is so reminiscent of so many people who are unfortunately losing their homes and need a legal path forwards to survive.
I love that. Sorry, I had to let that settle in because that's what it's all about. I mean, our children are the future. So if we can provide some sort of way of making it relatable to them, having them understand, that's all that matters. So let's dig into your week at Miss Earth USA, going all the way back. I mean, that was your first pageant as a Miss.
Mm-hmm.
So were you nervous at all about comparing yourself to other people, or just like, what was your thought process like? I mean, like for me, I get anxious sometimes just even thinking about what the week is going to look like. Well, how was your feelings?
My feelings were, as long as I get to share my message about climate refugees to a larger audience, that is at the end of the day what matters for me. I got into pageantry partially to learn how to communicate important issues that I care about to a larger audience. So if I'm able to do that with the judging panel, if I'm able to do that on stage, then at the end of the day, I'm happy. I didn't really put a lot of pressure on myself to win, being that it was my first Miss and national level pageant. But I was so fortunate with the outcome. I'm excited to share my message on an international globe. And I'm bringing that kind of mindset to the international competition. I'm not competing against other women. I'm there to share my message. And I'm viewing the international pageant more as a kind of conference of climate activists, young female climate activists
Like
from all
celebration.
around the world.
Yeah, it's like just celebrating everyone's actions. Because one thing I will attest to anytime someone says, like, did you like Miss Earth USA? Would you ever compete again? I sit up, I'm like, listen, all of our Earth girls, we are all dedicated. Even the national team, we are all just dedicated, and we put a lot of time into protecting and preserving our Earth. Like, there's not one Earth girl that I've came across that has been nasty, catty, or let alone just saying, oh, I'm just going to say recycle just for fun. Like, each of these girls have their own unique perspective and their own unique platform. And then we're all making an impact. We're all beauties for a cause. And that's what I love about the Earth system specifically, and is why I find it home for me all these years. It's because of the team, Laura. Everyone is so authentic, and she puts in a lot of time to make sure that we have the resources and the tools needed to really showcase that. Even the I forgot what the sponsor is, BetterHelp for mental health. Even her implementing that was just definitely needed, because there's so much chaos going on in the pageant world, and all of this drama feeding into these already present negative connotations to our world. So I'm super grateful for systems like that who stay true to themselves all these years. So I've actually, let's see. Now let's go back a little bit to your upbringing. You grew up in Wisconsin, right? So how was life like that? I mean, being Filipina, and then you also said you were Polish as well. So what was life like?
So growing up, it was a really interesting environment because I grew up in a suburb of Milwaukee that was predominantly white. So on my day to day, I felt really out of place all the time. Being a 5'11" Filipina is kind of an interesting mix. So I really bonded with actually Lisa Opie, our makeup artist at Miss Earth USA and sponsor through Beauty by Lady Code. And we both grew up in predominantly white areas. So for the longest time, we didn't see our beauty standard represented. But then when Catriona Gray won Miss Universe 2018, that's when I was like, maybe I can do pageants. Maybe I can be successful in this industry, even with modeling. And it's been a long journey to kind of work up my self-confidence. But I was really fortunate to grow up near a really diverse city in Milwaukee. I was fortunate to gain exposure to all these refugee students from different backgrounds because it opened up my eyes to there being a larger world outside of myself. And that's when I realized I want to use my privilege, my education, all of these opportunities that my family afforded me by immigrating to the United States to help others do the same. I've always wanted to pay it forward, and I hope to do that by being a lawyer who works in immigration reform, expanding our current definitions and legal pathways towards asylum to include our more underserved, underrepresented communities in the global world. Also, I am so fortunate that I'm able to represent my Filipino American heritage as Miss Earth USA. I'm fortunate and proud to be the first Filipino American to hold this title. And Lisa and I are actually launching a palette in the coming months that represents my background and is for every young Filipina American out there who feels like she might not fit in, for every young girl in general who feels like she's too diverse for her community, who feels really out of place. I see you, I feel you, and I want you to keep pushing forward and believe in yourself.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because there are so many young women out there who try to find someone to relate to. So that's super fun that you're collaborating with Lisa. Lisa, for you guys out there who do not know, Lisa is Lisa Opie. She owns Beauty by Lady Code, and she does a lot. She's an influencer, entrepreneur. She is super awesome. And for each of the delegates, you'll get your own palette. Even for Miss Biscaya, you get your own palette, and the qualities are just super amazing. So super shout out to Beauty by Lady Code, because all this was Beauty by Lady Code.
Same. Yeah.
I just love it. She's super sweet, and she has no problem passing it on and passing it forward. She's great people.
I love when successful people share in their success.
Yeah.
She is the opposite of a gatekeeper. I feel like she really emulates women empowering women.
Yeah. And the cool thing is Miss Earth is going to be in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So that's going to be fun. I mean, when is the pageant again?
So the pageant coronation date is October 12th. And the delegates will come a month earlier, and we'll do an entire month of different eco activities around the islands.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I'm about to compete. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, come back.
That is just crazy. I mean, how do you even prepare mentally to be out of the country? I mean, even though it'll be your home, how do you prepare? I mean, do you have like a list of all the things that you want to bring with you? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I've already been buying all the essentials that I'll need to bring, but I've also tried to be cognizant of, will I reuse this? I'm fortunate that our wardrobe team is really tuned in to what matters sustainability-wise. Fashion can be so wasteful, so I never want to buy something I'm just going to use once. Joan is our creative director, and he has formed partnerships with Rent the Runway. This is actually Rent the Runway here.
Yes.
So that enables you to just rent luxury brands at a fraction of the original price. And then at the end of the month you're renting them, you send it back. So it's a really great way to introduce diversity into your wardrobe without buying a lot. And then my gown designer is Carl Andrada, and you can commission him for new gowns, but you can just rent them. So once you're done with the competition, he'll take them back, and other girls in the future can reuse it instead of it kind of being a one and done deal. Another thing I'm doing for prep is I used to be conversational in Tagalog, but I've unfortunately kind of lost that. So I'm working on getting it back to a conversational level. I'm very passionate about learn the language of the country you're going to visit. Even if it's just small phrases, it shows an important level of respect. And then lastly, the mental physical prep has really been intertwined for me. I'm never going to be the type of girl anymore that like starves myself. I grew up with having anorexia. So my team has been great about keeping that in mind, keeping my mental health in check, while also providing me opportunities that will allow me to be prepared for that long month. Right now I'm on day 13 or 14 of a 2-week trip where I went to Miami, Puerto Rico, and now Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been so much fun. It's been great preparation in fostering my own independence because sometimes girls are just thrown in for that month, and it's a lot. It can be a lot.
Yeah. I did want to ask you, you were talking about how you have a team to help you internationally to prepare, make sure you have your food and your clothes. So I just want to reiterate that you do have a team, because I mean, a lot of title holders that we interviewed in the past mentioned that they got the national title, they are sent off to internationals, but don't have anyone out there to help, even national costume and all this stuff. So it's good to hear that you do have someone. So is it the same for you? Like, do you have someone for like national costume to help you out and wardrobe and all that stuff?
Yeah, I am so fortunate with how supportive the Miss Earth USA team is, helmed by the Laura Clark, who is one of the most professional, kind directors I've ever worked with. She kind of oversees everything, helps me understand the international paperwork. That's so important because oftentimes girls will just get a contract and they'll sign it without reading. But she has walked me through every portion of it, which I really hope is the norm in the pageant industry moving forward. We also have Ariel Sorensen is our assistant national director. She just organized all of our eco activities in Puerto Rico. It was such a great experience. We worked with an organization called Para la Naturaleza. Sorry, I
Sounded good though, girl.
mispronounced that, but we did an amazing biodiversity project where we deforested kind of deforested invasive species and planted indigenous trees. And that'll help fortify the land for the hurricane season. And I'm fortunate that we have a team that encourages those kinds of activities because it enables me to travel all around the country while still learning more and more about the climate movement. And then obviously Joanne is working on styling. I'm so happy that I have him because as a college student, I was wearing a lot of leggings and big t-shirts.
Hoodies.
Yeah. So it's been an amazing process to transform from like a regular college student to now Miss Earth USA.
Awesome. And oh yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you as well, is when it came to styling in that process, did you have to say like, hey, I like these items, or was he or she like, no, this is what we're gonna wear, take it or leave it? How was that process like?
It's been a very collaborative experience.
Okay.
So he definitely has his own style, but he's been great about working with my gown and national national costume designer Carl Andrada. I was very adamant, like, oh, I want to work with Tito Carl because he's the one that really saw my way through at Miss Earth USA. Being from Wisconsin, I didn't have a state director. So he stepped in and filled that role as not only a designer, but a pageant support system. So Joanne's been very open to working with him. We're working on my styling, my international wardrobe package right now. And I'm so excited to reveal what we have in a few months.
Yeah. So what do you, preparation wise, what are you doing differently, national versus international? Are you trying to fine tune certain things, or what does that look like for you?
I think this big switch is at the national level. I was very hyper fixated on my climate refugee platform. However, preparing for the international competition, I'm trying to become an casual expert, not like expert, but like know my way around every environmental issue I can think of, whether it be biodiversity, how algal blooms affect bodies of water. And that's been a really great experience. I feel like in college, I really hyperfixated on one thing. So being able to apply the skills I learned there and apply it to a larger range of ideas and knowledge base has been a great experience.
Yeah. So you just flew back from Puerto Rico. Do you have to go anywhere else after Atlanta, after here?
Oh no, after this, I'm heading home.
Ooh,
I'm
yes.
going to do some courtesy visits with local representatives at the state assembly level in Wisconsin. I'm hoping to introduce legislation just recognizing climate refugees, but that's a long, hard battle.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be back in my home state and connect with policymakers who are concerned about the same issues that I am.
What's next for you? I know you're about to go off to internationals, but is there a bigger picture for you, or what's next?
Bigger picture, after internationals, I'm planning on moving to New York City.
Okay.
There's a lot of opportunities in international affairs there. So I'm looking at a few positions at the UN, just being like a personal assistant or something and working my way up.
Yeah.
And then I'm also launching a educational and policy initiative called the Higher Ground Initiative. And Miss Earth is not the end for my work with climate refugees. I hope to make it my life's mission. So through the Higher Ground Initiative, we hope to create educational packets that people across the country can use to educate themselves and others on the climate refugee crisis. And then we also hope to make a policy brief for concerned politicians to bring to the policymaking process to inform their decisions in how they make asylum and how they shape asylum and immigration policies moving forward.
How can we follow you? How can we help you along your journey?
So you can follow me at Bea.Millan-Windorski, long on Instagram, I know. And then also the Miss Earth USA account. It's just Miss Earth USA, one word, on all social media platforms. And lastly, please follow the Higher Ground Initiative. We'll have a lot more content rolling out in the future. Right now, we're just focusing on making blog posts that kind of inform our audience on what a climate refugee is, and current issues that are displacing people right now.
Yes, you guys have heard it from the Earth Queen herself. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, comment your favorite moment, comment who you want to see next. And we have Miss Earth USA here in the house. Bea, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, y'all. See you in the next episode.